there comes a point in just about every single Spider-Man show in which the symbiote and by extension Venom is going to show up. No matter where the show is taking place, no matter what's going on, we're always going to have a symbiote arc of some kind because it's one of Spider-Man's most impactful and most popular stories. So when I got around to talking about Ultimate Spider-Man and just how different it was even from the source material it's based on with the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, I was curious to see how this show would adapt the black suit, especially with its more comedic style. But nothing could have prepared me for just how weird this version of the symbiote arc would be relative to every other Spider-Man show I've covered on my channel previously. That's right, I cover Spider-Man pretty frequently on this channel, so if you end up enjoying the video, consider leaving a like and potentially subscribe to see more in the future. Now, when I say that this symbiote arc is weird, I truly do mean it, because it starts unlike any other kind of arc that the symbiote has ever traditionally followed. Much like the Ultimate comics before it, this show decides not to go the route of cosmic space being, but rather a genetic experiment. This time, instead of being a cure for cancer like in the Ultimate comics, this is Dr. Octavius and by extension Norman Osborn, who hired him, trying to create a group of super soldiers that match Spider-Man's power set. And to do so, they take his blood and extract all of the most evil, nasty, and violent traits out of it, and are attempting to make a symbiote that can go over a group of guards and essentially create what is a Spider-Man-esque army, so that Norman Osborn can rule the world because he's evil. As I discussed in my last video talking about this Spider-Man show, it definitely went out of its way to try and be different and to differentiate itself from the previous shows that had come before it. They're clearly trying to differentiate from the black suit that we saw in Spider-Man Unlimited, in the 90s Spider-Man show, and even in Spectacular Spider-Man, and they're going more the Ultimate route with the idea that this is a science experiment rather than some sort of alien. And in keeping with that theme, because the symbiote perfectly bonded to Peter in the Ultimate comics due to it being based off his father's DNA, this version of the symbiote directly being from Peter's blood is desperate to rebond with him, to the point that it escapes Norman's lab and tracks him down to a party that Harry is hosting, and is actively trying to reconnect itself with Spider-Man. And in trying to do this, it ends up taking a couple of different hosts that I thought were pretty cool, and people that have genuinely never worn the symbiote outside of fun one-shot comics in alternate universes. Namely, we see Nova and as well Iron Fist and Luke Cage don the black costume, and they're all in a very Venomized format. That's something that also was very interesting to me, is there's no real black Spider-Man suit in this first appearance of Venom, and it is named Venom in that episode deliberately by Otto and Norman. There is no traditional black suit, much like in the Ultimate comics where Peter wears it for like a couple of minutes and then it goes full Venom on him. When he bonds with the Venom symbiote in this episode, it immediately tries to play on his worst impulses, much as how it was designed to by Norman and Otto Octavius, which I actually think is a really interesting way to look at the symbiote being evil, especially with how it's portrayed a lot of the times. I always am bugged by the idea that the symbiote is just evil for evil's sake, when there are so many comic books that have come out in recent years that is all about how the symbiote thinks for itself. The reason it was evil tends to do with the way in which Peter debonded himself from it, and that the symbiote wasn't trying to be evil but thought it was genuinely helping. This version of the symbiote, instead, literally being made of Peter's worst impulses, does a lot to ward away that criticism and as well explain why Venom is so hyper angry all of the time and why it's so desperate to get back with Spider-Man, at least in this first episode. I also just think the design is really awesome in this episode. As well, I think it's got some of the best symbiote effects that I've seen them have since Spider-Man Unlimited, which I think before this had the best looking variants of the symbiote when it comes to the idea of tendrils, of being this sticky, icky, gooey alien. Even though this isn't the alien version of the symbiote, it's all DNA, I think the animation goes a long way to making it look really cool. But as far as, you know, how accurate this is, it's not. And that's something you gotta kind of come to accept with this show specifically, is it's going to be wacky, it's gonna be off the wall. And if you're expecting a perfectly comic book accurate show, go watch something more like Spectacular, or literally the most accurate is probably the 90s show. Honestly, despite how weird of an intro this is for the symbiote, I do very much like the ideas that were put in place behind it, and I am a pretty big fan of not only how it looked, but just by how interesting this entire episode was regarding the suit itself and Peter's relationship to it. Because Peter doesn't actually, outside of being DNA related to it, have a lot to do with the black suit arc in him wearing the suit anyways. And we'll see that because at the end of this episode, Harry ends up finding a small piece of the symbiote and decides to keep it for himself to try and train it. And that pretty much wraps up the symbiote's first appearance in Ultimate Spider-Man. And since I think this is a comedy show, I thought it would be funny that at the end of each episode I cover, I pick out one or maybe a couple of my favorite gags. For this episode, it happened to be the Wheel of Excuses.
Oh, excuses!
Aunt May's sick. Studying at MJ's. Rancid chili dog. Lame story.
The next time the symbiote would actually make an appearance, it's being inhabited by Harry Osborn. And in this universe, instead of Peter being the black-suited Spider-Man, instead it's Harry. I actually do kind of wonder if this is partly where Insomniac got the idea for Harry Osborn to have the symbiote suit before Peter. Except in this universe, it's more of a gimmick and a tool for him and less a cure for his disease. And of course, Peter discovers all of this while being extraordinarily sick, and as well, the public is absolutely enamored with Black Spider-Man. I think this is partly a meta joke to the idea that so many fans love the black and white suit over the blue and red suit, and just how popular Black Spider-Man and Symbiote Spider-Man is in general. I mean, they even got Flash replacing his Spider-Man poster with the black suited Spider-Man, and Flash is Peter's biggest fan when he's not busy stuffing the real Peter in lockers and looking up to the dude that wears the mask every day. Peter is obviously the one to draw the parallel between Black Suit Spider-Man being Venom. Everybody else is quickly convinced by a quick costume change, and once again this goes to show that Clark Kent wearing glasses just makes sense as a superhero identity. Now, this version of Harry Osborn wearing the Venom suit is pretty much everything that Spider-Man isn't. He is this overly confident in a jerkish kind of way. Spider-Man has a lot of confidence, he's got a lot of swag, but not in the way that Black Spider-Man does. He's overly aggressive and lacking the restraint that Peter shows almost constantly being Spider-Man. And this only gets worse when Peter finds out that Harry is the one inhabiting the suit, because now he feels responsible for trying to get his best friend out of the symbiote. He is genuinely worried about it corrupting Harry, and Harry, for some credit, does have it under control using this little watch device, at least for right now. But Peter knows, having bonded with it previously, that it will quickly spiral out of his control, no matter how well maintained he thinks he has it.
Well, it's just a small piece of it. I found it, and I've totally got it trained. But come on, this is the best thing that ever happened. I mean, I am the new and improved Spider-Man, and everybody loves me.
I really want to harp on that everybody loves me idea. You see, Harry, despite being rich, well off, and having to want for nothing in his life, still deals with the fact that his father is a rich, egotistical prick that couldn't be bothered to show his son any modicum of love, and it's not like his mother's in his life to balance that out either. As a matter of fact, instead of giving the "with great power comes great responsibility" speech, Harry instead gets told, if you have great power, you should abuse it. And so of course he's kind of taking that to heart with the black suit. Harry himself, pretty much outside of Peter and MJ, doesn't really have a ton of friends. He is very much shown to be this nerdy, kind of laid back guy, and he doesn't have a great relationship with Norman, again, due to him being an egotistical prick, and one that couldn't be cared less about his son. Like, to me, it's mind-blowing that he couldn't care less about his son, but we see so many rich people do it that I'm not really surprised. As a matter of fact, the only reason Harry was throwing a rager of the party in the previous episode, in which the Venom symbiote followed Peter to, was because Peter had blown Harry off, specifically to hang out with his team because they were needed to do some sort of after-school mission, and Peter failed to give them an excuse, and then later at lunch, Peter's new teammates were making fun of Harry and the idea that he's a rich guy that doesn't need any friends or anybody around him because he's got money. So instead, they were just going to go off and have him after school kind of insult Harry. And so of course, Harry's pissed. He's unhappy by this. And so he decides, instead of having a small get together like he usually does to like play board games or video games with Peter and MJ, he throws a giant party throwing his money around to try and gain him friendship in order to potentially get that love and affection that he can't find from his dad through his friends. And when that's not enough, he eventually goes out and seeks the Venom symbiote, much like we saw at the end of that episode. And as Peter predicted, Harry almost immediately the following night loses control of the symbiote because it's always going to act on, especially in this show, because I loved the way they explained it. It's literally DNA isolated to amp up all of your worst possible impulses, because Norman was trying to build the most evil army of all time. And now that it's in the hands of Harry, who is already feeling this wealth of sadness and anger and just general annoyance at his own father, is now in possession of a dangerous super suit, so it's really no surprise that he eventually would lose control. To me, this reads as a very classic tale of addiction, of a rich kid that was neglected for a majority of his life and ends up only finding his solace in substance abuse, i.e. the substance in this case being the black suit. I've been on record multiple times on this channel comparing the black suit not only to abusive relationships, but also to addiction. I very much do find it tends to represent those two things very well. And I think in this show in particular, especially with the last episode that we'll cover in this video, very much fits the addiction stereotype of the symbiote. But that portion of it aside, this is also our first look at a true Venom for the show. And I do actually really enjoy this Venom design. I think it looks great. I think the action scenes between it and Peter are phenomenal. That's actually something I really enjoyed about this show. I thought the action scenes were good. Nothing to me is gonna top spectacular, but these were pretty good. By the end of the episode, once again, Peter is able to figure out a way to defeat the Venom symbiote, and I find it interesting that it pretty much gets beaten in almost the same way in back-to-back episodes, denoting that it doesn't necessarily have a weakness to fire or sound, but rather electricity. And that's something they're pretty consistent about in this show. And after Harry gets separated from the symbiote, he's actually very thankful because it was taking over his life.
I couldn't control it. I thought I could, but I almost lost myself, didn't I?
And while Harry receives a pretty decent resolution at the end of this episode and reconciles with Spider-Man, as well entirely avoiding jail, this show doesn't even bother with the idea or concept that Harry might need to go to jail like Spectacular did between Harry and Peter and the Green Goblin. But I also think that just fits the theme of this episode better. As a matter of fact, Peter is desperately trying to keep Harry's eyes out of the public eye. He's not even conflicted because he ries for his dog. I kind of like that. Oh, and Norman is just absolutely elated that Venom is as aggressive and insane as it is and just wants his hands on it. But not all is right. Harry does still have a little bit of Venom left in him. And we'll get to that in the next episode, because right now it's time for a segment of my favorite gags from this episode, in which I have a couple, like the fact that Peter got his entire team sick, and for the second episode in a row covering Venom, they're going to jump him at the end of the episode. I absolutely love this. Next up, we have the fact that Spider-Man was contemplating revealing his identity, to which everybody, and I mean everybody, laughed at him and thought it was some kind of joke, which I absolutely love. Stan Lee cameo, so shout out. And then of course we have Spider-Man putting his right hand up to Galactus that he doesn't know who Venom was. This is so silly to me. And finally, my favorite gag of the episode involves my boy Dupe, the best mutant ever.
Brought here from the cosmic reaches of the universe with his faithful space blob Dupe. He is a powerful force for good, dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
And just like any good habit, the black suit comes back expeditiously. And this time it's dead set on not only making Peter look bad, but also taking out villains in the most violent way possible. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure why it's trying to violently take down the Leaper, other than the fact that it just likes to fight. And that's the best that I've got with this version of the symbiote. Motivations in this show aren't exactly the most pure. This very much reminds me of when I covered Iron Man Armored Adventures, which was just more about enjoying watching a show I saw growing up. Anyways, this new version of Spider-Man is causing horrific PR for the OG Peter because apparently everybody in this entire city has the attention span of a goldfish and has completely forgotten about the black-suited Spider-Man that also happened to attack New York as Venom only like a few weeks ago. But, you know, New Yorkers, man. They see crazy shit every week in the Marvel Universe, so it's probably just best to forget about it and move on. And with that, we're also introduced to a Harry that is extraordinarily sick. He looks miserable, and this is again where I think the addiction element of the black suit comes into play, as it being a metaphor for it anyways, as Harry looks absolutely utterly miserable and is visibly seen to not be doing well. The symbiote has, as it has done with Peter in previous iterations, taken control of Harry when he is asleep, when he's doing other things. He's not fully in control of his body, and I think that mirrors the idea of addiction a lot, because at first you're controlling it, much like he did with the watch, but eventually, and it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it happens, it will take control of you, and before you know it, you no longer have control of what you're spending your money on, what you're spending your time on, and in this case, how you're acting with your insanely superpowered suit, because it now controls you. Or maybe I'm just thinking a bit too deep into it, and that's what happens when talking about kids' TV becomes your job. Anyways, let's see what happens when Norman comes face to face with the creation he oh so loves.
Long I've waited, hoping that
I mean, personally, it's no surprise at all that Harry's vengeance and anger and all of the feelings that he has are being manifested in him attacking his dad, especially when he probably was going to talk to his father about the fact that he is periodically transforming into a terrible creature of the night that is doing irreparable harm and damage to people. But his father is genuinely the worst father of the year. I mean, this version of Norman Osborn is comically negligent. And as well, Peter is stuck in this terrible limbo space where he doesn't want Harry to get found out. So instead, he quite literally blocks off the rest of his team from following him in their entirety and tries to go deal with the entire situation himself, which, if you can guess, doesn't exactly go the greatest. As a matter of fact, Harry Osborn is right back to beating up on his father. Peter is completely outmatched, especially with no nearby electrical devices to throw Venom into, and his team eventually does catch up with him and ends up saving his life. And they have this wonderful chat with Norman Osborn in which he essentially says, "You kids and Spider-Man, please get out of my business so I can exploit my poor son's addiction to the symbiote and take advantage of the fact that he's a hulking rage monster. Please don't take a shot for every time I've called Norman a horrible father. You will go to the ICU." I actually really like this next scene, which I feel like for once actually builds upon a thread throughout Ultimate Spider-Man that had been building in the first season, as these symbiote episodes are pretty decently spread out from early season to mid-season to right near the end. And for me, it's this idea that Spider-Man is finally coming to truly trust the team that he has around him and has stopped acting as though he is solely a solo act and is more or less embracing actually being a team leader. This show doesn't do a whole lot for overarching continuity in these early seasons, but I think they do a really great job of having some here with the way in which he interacts with his team. And I think that having that little circle of trust where he finally opens up about Harry being Venom and about him trying to help his friend is really great. We also get some great looks at Peter being genuinely smart, looking for a cure for Venom. I love that during the entire sequence, Peter is just jamming out to music and building a cure while his team is fighting for their lives. I can just imagine him listening to "I'm My Own Worst Enemy" while this entire sequence is going down. I really enjoyed it. Again, part of why I love this show so much is that it is more comedy focused and more comedy based. It does have its serious moments. I do really love this fight scene at the end of the episode. I think it handled the Venom arc pretty seriously, but also did a great job of weaving in the kind of humor the show is known for, which isn't for everybody, but I tend to really enjoy it and find it fun. And it is finally at this point in the episode, not only is Peter able to hit Venom with the cure for what is essentially this disease, It's also incapacitated by the overwhelming lightning strikes, again keeping with the theme that the weakness that this version of Venom has is lightning, kind of like how Insomniac ignored the fire and heat issue and really only focused on sound. The cure, at least for now, effectively renders Venom officially dead. At least this version of Venom, but it leaves Harry in a pretty damaged state, to the point that he is in the hospital and he doesn't seem to be doing the best. He's getting better, but he's never going to potentially be where he was at least that's how the show kind of plays it off as. But Norman, of course, he don't care about any of that shit. He said, I got Harry's blood, which means I can make another Venom. I hate this, man, he's gonna make me say words that are demonetizable. I hate this dude. Anyways, let's talk about something that I like. Now, the entire weird symbiote arc is kind of wrapped up, and that is our gags of the episodes. I misspoke earlier when I said that Peter got jumped at the end of the episode in that first Venom episode. No, it is in fact at the end of this one for a second Venom episode consecutively that Peter has his teammates find a way to get him jumped. My next favorite addition was once again the Wheel of Excuses, and finally the angel and devil on Peter's shoulders, which is my favorite running gag in the show. Wait, hold on, why the hell Peter iced out like that?
Now, we'll have none of that naughty talk. You made your bed, now you'll have to sleep in it. Now, don't listen to that wuss. You know what you've got to do.
I'd say overall, this was by far the weirdest symbiote arc that I've ever bore witness to, because it bucks so many of the traditional trends involving the suit, and that is something that Ultimate definitely did as well. The comic book, that is, it bucked a lot of those trends revolving around what the black suit was, what it was meant to be. But I think this show took it a step further, because the idea that Peter doesn't even inhabit the suit even once as like the traditional black suit, but rather it's somebody else being Black Spider-Man for a minute, is kind of a very different concept. Even the comic didn't go that way. It immediately made Eddie Brock Venom. Well, no, I definitely think it was an interesting concept to put it off on Harry rather than, you know, just going the same route of telling the same story with Peter. But I'm gonna be honest, I'm not exactly sure that I love it. Is it nice, you know, considering the fact that I've at this point seen so many adaptations of a traditional black suit story, that instead we were getting something new and different? Yes, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like the novelty factor outweighs the what the hell did I just watch factor. As well, if they were trying to go for any angle revolving around addiction, it was kind of half-baked at best. Maybe I was just reading into this a little bit too much and I just wanted to find something to talk about. Overall, like, not bad. The jokes were really funny, and that's more or less the reason I find this show so enjoyable, and that's why I wanted to make a whole entire segment of my videos dedicated to, you know, sharing my favorite jokes from the show. But overall, I would say this is the weirdest symbiote arc I've ever seen. So thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider leaving a like. If you want to sub to see more content like this in the future, that'd be appreciated. As well, I have a Patreon where for $1 a month, you can see these videos early and you can see them without the changes I have to make for copyright and YouTube. It's linked in the description below. Don't feel like you have to join the Patreon because your viewership is more than enough. So once again, thank you all so much for watching. Have an absolutely fantastic day.